In the classic biker movie Easy Rider, there's a great conversation that most casual watchers completely miss. It's when the guys get turned away at a motel for looking the way they do.
They scared of what you represent to them. Freedom.
Whether you love it, whether you hate it, the reality is it's an iconic look that tons of women love, that tons of men are intimidated by. And when it comes to style, it's a look that can't be ignored. So have you ever been out driving and had a pack of bikers swarm past you? Maybe you're at a stoplight and all of a sudden you got the roar of straight pipes to your right, to your left, right behind you. Or maybe you're at a bar or a restaurant. You got 5 to 10 guys that come in with their vests and their patches. Straight up, how does it make you feel? Well, gents, as a former motorcyclist myself who's put on over 100,000 miles, hitting all lower 48 states and most of Canada, I can tell you the bikers I ran into were all nice guys. In today's video, I want to talk specifically about biker style. I'm going to talk about the clothing pieces. I'm going to talk about the history of those pieces. And I will talk briefly about patches and what you want to avoid, otherwise you could get your ass kicked. Seriously, just because you can buy a patch on the internet does not mean that you have the right to wear it. Just ask any Army Ranger or Navy SEAL about that. So the birth of motorcycle clothing obviously started with the birth of the motorcycle. Going back to the 1900s to 1920s, we saw most of the clothing that people were wearing was simply practical pieces that protected them as they rode these early bikes. Long coats that kept the wearer warm and protected him somewhat from the elements. Tall boots, specifically horse riding boots, because they were made from a tougher leather and they did a good job of protecting the rider's legs from the hot parts of the engine. Leather caps, not so much from protection. I guess it would be something to catch your brains, but no, the leather cap was more to keep the rain off of the head and keep the head somewhat warm. But the most iconic piece to come from this time period, goggles. Goggles that actually enclosed around the eye and protected the wearer's eyes from not only the wind, but dirt and debris that would get kicked up. Now, as motorcycling became more popular, especially in areas where you could do it year-round, it was a less expensive alternative than to a car. We naturally started to see a rise in motorcycling clubs. Yeah, cars had clubs, but motorcycling clubs, there was just something different about them. Most of the motorcycle owners, these were men with a little bit more of an adventurous spirit. Early clubs in the 1930s started to have a little bit of symbolism, colors, maybe even little patches they were putting on their jackets so that they could recognize each other. But it was in the mid-1940s, whenever we started seeing a lot of people coming back from World War II, the veterans, all of a sudden we had a huge influx of men with a bit of money and men that, let's just say, had been a little bit reckless or at least had lived on the edge, and they wanted something like that. Motorcycles were a natural attraction and they wanted the grouping. They wanted the affinity that you had, the camaraderie in a group unit. These clubs started to explode. In fact, you could say they literally did explode in 1947 at the Hollister riot. Now, a lot of it was sensationalized apparently by the media. It wasn't that out of control, but you had a lot of bikers that, yeah, they didn't want to go home. They wanted to party. They were drinking. They were maybe throwing some bottles around. Reality is, nobody was killed. There were maybe a few injuries. There was a little bit of a scuffle between law enforcement and the bikers, but all of a sudden this was picked up and bikers were viewed as, yeah, these were a bit of a menace. These were guys that were pushing against society. And what naturally happens when a group is attacked? Well, that group comes together and they get even stronger. They've now got a common enemy. You had all this surplus clothing. All of a sudden you started seeing the rise of uniforms with these clubs. They all had all this military surplus clothing. Patches started popping up. In fact, one key term that came out of that 1947 Hollister riot is the word one percenter. And this is actually what the American Motorcycle Association apparently referred to the troublemakers. Oh, there's just 1% of us. Well, the guys that, were there and those that viewed themselves as these kind of people, they said, you know what? Hey, I'm this 1%er. And all of a sudden you saw that's where actually the patch apparently originated from. But it was in the 1950s when the rebel motorcycle image took front stage and center with the movie The Wild One featuring Marlon Brando. Now, there were a lot of other characters in that movie that had an effect on the perception of style of motorcyclists, but it's hard to understand, I think, nowadays to understand the cultural significance of this, because movies back then, it was pretty much the only thing that people were talking about. It was the only show in town. It's not like you went to the Cinemaplex and there were like 20 different movies or 55,000, 10 million, whatever it is you can stream online. Now, people really were very singular in what they were seeing, and this movie captivated the country. Marlon Brando's character, Johnny Strabler, clad in a black leather jacket, he epitomized what it meant to be a rebel leader of a motorcycle group. And so that takes us to the first iconic piece of biker style, the black leather jacket. Now, the first and probably most iconic leather jacket for a motorcyclist is going to be the double rider. Now, when you first look at a double rider, what you're going to notice is that the zipper is not right down the center. This is on purpose. What we have is an overlap of leather so that if you're riding a motorcycle at high speed with no windshield, you're getting that full blast of air at 40 miles an hour, 50, 60, 80, whatever it is you're driving. You aren't having that air penetrate through the zipper. No, that double layer is doing the functional job of protecting you from that blast of air. In addition, you know how the double rider rides high. So it's going to fit right in around the waist. It's going to give you full freedom of movement, but look at the length in the arms. This is on purpose because whenever you ride a motorcycle, what happens? Your hands are going forward and you need to have that extra length so that your wrists aren't exposed. Another key feature of a classic double rider is going to be the belt around the midsection. Nowadays, if you get it cut to fit you well, it's not really needed, but you're going to find that there's various cuts and sometimes there's that excess material. You want to be able to tighten this up so it's not flapping in the wind. Now, there are some design features which are kind of left over from its military heritage. You're going to see epaulets on the shoulders. And depending on the style, you sometimes see no pockets, other times up to 3 to 4 pockets in various spots. What you're overall going to find is the design is asymmetrical. Now, I'm not going to deny it's a cool style, but personally, I'm a fan of the Cafe Racer. And so as you can immediately see, this one is going to have the zipper going up and down the front. And the style here suits the type of bikes I used to ride. I do like crotch rockets. I like sports tours. These are bikes that you're bent over a bit more and you've usually got a shield that's keeping a lot of the wind off you. That being said, on a lot of these motos, you're also going to find a small overlap of leather that is going to protect you and actually do a pretty functional job of keeping the wind out. On a Cafe Racer, you're usually going to find 2 pockets, which you could put your hands in if you wanted to keep warm, just wearing it as a day-to-day jacket, but they also should zip up to be able to keep whatever you put in there staying in place after you've been riding for a couple hours. Now, a classic moto jacket is going to have a zipper right here. This one is made to look like a moto jacket, but it's not a true one. It's made from a very lightweight leather. Classic moto jackets, especially the double rider, are going to be made from a heavier weight leather. The reason being is that these jackets serve a very functional purpose. If you ever go down on your motorcycle, which anyone that's ever ridden a bike knows will eventually happen no matter how safe you are. So it probably wasn't too much of a stretch to take that leather jacket and for people to start to associate it with the rebel, with someone that doesn't fit into the rules, with that 1% club, with those people that aren't afraid to live life on their terms. And that's exactly what the movie The Wild One and many others since then have done with the leather jacket. In fact, look at fighter pilots. What are they wearing? Leather jackets. Now, this didn't come out of motorcycling, but they were synonymous. You had this guy, he's a maverick, someone that's not afraid to go their own way. Wearing this leather jacket, all of a sudden we start to see this correlation. We have this association that we naturally think these two go together. Now, at this point, you may be wondering, how does my style measure up? What actions do I need to take? Well, gents, if you haven't taken our style quiz over at Real Men Real Style, I'm going to link to it down in the description below. This is a free and fun quiz in which we ask you questions and then we give you a breakout of your style score in areas that you can improve. Now, in the 1960s, we saw the rise of the counterculture movement. Going into the 1970s, all of a sudden, biker gangs or biker clubs, and I know that there's a distinction according to law enforcement, but I'm going to go ahead and just call them biker clubs right now. But we saw these all of a sudden start to rise all over the place. And they really got in tight. And that's when we saw the rise of the Hells Angels, probably the most famous one. But you also see the Banditos, you see the Outlaws, the Mongols, the Pagans. And it was during this time period that we saw the rise of the vest. Now, in theory, a leather vest is nothing more than a jacket without the sleeves. However, the patches on that vest have significant meaning to the men that wear them. In fact, I promise a little bit later in this video, I'm going to break out the different types of patches. I'm going to talk about some of the acronyms, what they mean, and definitely the patches you never want to get caught wearing. In any case, it was the counterculture movement that all of a sudden we started seeing a big rise in the long facial hair, the beards, the longer hair, even tattoos among bikers all of a sudden becoming much more prevalent. And understand there are symbols which each club holds dear. In general, skulls, wings, and a lot of motorcycle-related imagery. You just want to understand what you're getting tattooed on your body. Because yeah, certain people may have an issue with it. Now, starting in the 1980s and 1990s, an interesting thing happened. All of a sudden, motorcycling became accepted by society in general. And you see these guys, this group of guys on a Harley, they aren't outlaw bikers here. No, these guys are a bunch of dentists and lawyers that decided they just want to spend their extra money and get some nice Harleys and go riding on the weekends. These were the years that we saw the rise of the American manufacturers, Harley-Davidson in particular, and we really saw this company just explode. In fact, recently, they're just now getting a downturn because everyone that, joined and started riding motorcycles in the 80s or 90s is now kind of aging out. But Harley did an excellent job of marketing the idea of freedom associated with two wheels. Now, some people will call this the rub period, the rise of the rich urban biker, but what nobody can deny is all of a sudden dressing like a biker and bringing in the style became much more accepted. I mean, all of a sudden you have people that have never even ridden a Harley Davidson, wearing Harley Davidson gear, sporting it like, they're a huge supporter, and it actually, they were producing so many motorcycles, the used market was flooded. And an interesting side effect is all of a sudden lawmakers and safety advocates started paying attention to motorcycle helmets. Now, initially they tried to make it a national law, but they just eventually focused in on keeping it state by state. California, one of the first ones. But within many places now there being a requirement to actually wear a helmet, all of a sudden we started seeing different styles of helmets emerge. Now, personally, I think you're an idiot if you're riding without a helmet. Guys, it's such a small thing, and I know it's not always comfortable, it messes up your hair. I've heard all the excuses. I'm around tons of bikers, and I used to be that stupid person. But then I was in an accident and I had a helmet and it saved my life. And yes, I know a helmet isn't always going to save your life, but man, it really increases the chances. Now, throughout the United States, we got different laws in different states when it comes to helmets. You're going to see some of them are pretty lax, so that's why they allow these things called lids. They basically are legal compliant, but when it comes to protection, they provide almost none. I personally think at the very bare minimum, you should be going with an open-faced helmet, but a fully closed helmet is best. And I think the best of both worlds is a fully enclosed helmet that actually opens up into an open-faced helmet. These were pretty much, they were more expensive, but this is the helmet I went with and absolutely loved. Another thing I appreciate about this time period is the rise just of different types of gear. Because motorcycling exploded, all of a sudden, like when I talked about jackets that have armor, you had things that actually looked good. I remember gloves. Gloves are another component that I think any guy can bring in and bring in that motorcycle look. You can go with the simple fingerless gloves that you see also in weight rooms, but those don't provide that much protection, and I avoided them. Now, the type of gloves that I went with were the full gauntlet style, and so these are going to cover the wrists, and they're going to go a little bit up the forearm. Now, there's all different variations out there, and I've owned a wide variety. I loved the type that had armor on them, literally Kevlar right there on the knuckles and on the fingers. I just thought they looked really cool. The point being is biker gloves can be pretty damn stylish, so check them out. I'm not going to say you can wear them day to day in cold weather wear, but you want to grab a pair, maybe you snowmobile, you can find other uses for them. Now, what about boots? So as I mentioned, men have been wearing boots with motorcycles for over 100 years. Initially, they took boots out of different industries like engineering boots, harness boots, work boots, logging boots, anything that could give you grip, anything that would protect the feet, anything that went up, covered the ankles, and a bit of the calves was considered good to go. All that being said, I think it was a great thing in the 80s and the 90s, we started seeing boots made specifically for motorcyclists. These were made to fully cover the calf. They used the zipper so they could be put on and taken off easily. And they were also made from materials that were made not only to be water resistant, but heat resistant. On top of that, they started using really lightweight materials. I remember back in 2001, I bought a pair of BMW boots. And what I loved about these is how incredibly comfortable they were and easy to wear for 16 to 20 hours a day. Oh, and of course, always make sure your boots have a non-slip sole. You want something that can deal with oil on the ground, because that's one of the worst things. Whenever you stop your motorcycle, you put your feet down and a foot comes out from under you, all of a sudden you can drop the whole bike. Now, more recently, the style and lives of bikers have been brought to the forefront thanks to shows like Sons of Anarchy. The show ran from 2008 to 2014, but I still see the clips all over YouTube. I can tell you this series had a profound impact on people's perceptions of bikers and the nuances that go on in their lives, from the brotherhood to loyalty to the morality and decisions and problems these guys face. And Mayans MC, a spinoff, has picked off where Sons of Anarchy left off. Now, of course, all that's Hollywood. It's not even close to reality. Or is it? All right, gentlemen, so now let's talk vests and patches. I'm going to give you a 101 explainer. So let's start things off with the back patches. In general, on the back of a biker's vest who is part of a club, you will see 3 patches, hence why it's called the 3-piece patch. The top and bottom patches are called rockers, the top rocker and the bottom rocker, respectively. In the center is the self-described center patch, and this is usually where we see the main large logo. Now, in the top rocker, this is where we see the actual name of the club. In the bottom, this is where we see the geographic territory or the chapter. And by the way, not all biker clubs actually have a bottom rocker, so occasionally you'll see that one excluded. Now, arguably the most important patch is the center patch, and that's going to be the club's main logo, their emblem. This is the patch that's central to the club's identity and cannot be worn by all people, even if they've got that top patch, because there are different levels in different clubs, which goes way beyond this video, but understand that you could see somebody wearing that top rocker without a centerpiece. That being said, in most situations, if they've got all three or they at least have the top two, we know that this is probably a full member of the club. Now, moving to the front of the vest, this is where we start to see individuality. And perhaps the most individual patch is going to be the biker's nickname. This is often right there on the front, maybe left or right side, depends on the club, but this is the name the biker is known by in his organization. Another common patch we'll see on the front of the vest is the club position patch. This is the rank of the wearer in the club. You could have president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, road captain. Next up, you're going to see memorial patches. These often commemorate fallen club members, or you're going to see patches that commemorate a significant event or date in which something important to the club happened. Now, the next set of patches, insignia and symbols, these have all types of meanings, and there's a wide variety of these ones you're going to see out there. Probably one of the most common is going to be the 1%er. The idea here is this signifies an outlaw biker, although apparently a lot of bikers say this one has no significance, so what we see are a lot of club-specific patches. Some groups out there have wings with various colors with different meanings, and I'm not going to go into that in today's video. But yeah, I know a lot of you guys know different meanings, different acronyms. If you want to add this stuff down in the comments below, feel free to. But as you can pick up in general, at the front of the vest, this is where we have a lot more of the individuality, and color and positioning is important. The larger clubs, they've got rules, they got protocols on exactly where you wear the patches and which ones you're allowed to wear and for what purposes. And again, if you don't know what a patch means, or just because it's for sale on the internet, I would highly advise you not to buy it and wear it. Again, understand what you're buying when it comes to this culture, and yes, be careful. That being said, I know there's a lot of you guys that have something similar, but it's maybe for your church biker club or for your local biker club with, I don't know, Knights of Columbus. Some of these other groups, I see it all the time. And it's interesting to see, you know, how you've got some groups that do it this way, other groups that do it this way. Again, if you're part of a club, if you've got some history here, if you know anything, I always love hearing from you guys, so let us know in the comments below. And what video to watch next? Well, guys, check out this video right here. Seriously, if you like these style videos, if you want to learn a little bit more about a style, yeah, check this one out right here. Why is the Mafia so stylish, or why were they? Guys, if you enjoyed today's video, you are going to love this one right here. Check it out. Boom. Oh yeah.